I wasn't going to talk to you about CBC today, despite the state broadcaster being before the Access to Information Committee. Even though they named me several times, they kept reading from my articles. Very, very flattering to have yourself named all the time in a parliamentary committee. It was the Canadian Media Guild and Friends of Canadian Broadcasting that were testifying. But then an interesting thing happened. Dean Del Mastro, a Conservative on the committee, put forward a motion saying that the MPs on the committee, the MPs studying this issue, should get to see one of the access to information requests that CBC denied. It's one of the ones I told you about. I showed it to you on air. We asked how many vehicles they have, and they only admitted to running an entire network in English and French across the country with one Ford sedan. So Del Mastro said, we want to see this, and we're going to pass a motion at committee, and that would force CBC to give the MPs on the committee this document. Not give it to everyone in the world, just the MPs on the committee. And that's when the interesting thing happened. The NDP and Liberals, led by Charlie Angus, the New Democrat culture critic, lost their collectivist mind. These are people who wanted to make sure that you could see all the Taliban prisoner documents. That was a fundamental issue of parliamentary democracy. They nearly toppled the government over it. They went and got a ruling, tried to get a ruling of contempt of parliament against the Harper government over this a year ago. Now, they don't want to see the documents. Check out this clip from Angus.
Yes, I find this once again turning our committee into a somewhat of a circus at the request of Mr. Del Mastro. I think the issue of this Conservative Party looking to get their hands on unredacted documents so they could make the decision as to what documents should be looked at and what isn't is not within their purview, that it's usurping the work of the Information Commissioner. I'd also suggest that given the antics that I've seen at this committee over the last 2 weeks, that I think it would be definitely not in the public interest to allow that party over there to put themselves in the position of arbiter. If they want to be an arbiter, they can take in legislation and they can change the act.
Okay, so Charlie Angus believes we should all get to see, including the Taliban, documents vital to Canada's national security, but no documents when it comes to CBC. That's the mindset. Show us documents vital to national security, protect the state broadcaster. It shows you where his priorities are. They're out of whack. They're insane. Brad Butt's a Conservative MP on the committee. We had a chance to drop by his office and chat with him about what happened earlier today. Mr. Butt, you were at committee today and pushing to say, why don't they just open up the books? There was an interesting point made to you at one moment. Ian Morrison from Friends of Canadian Broadcasting saying, you guys appointed all the directors of CBC. You can change them. Is that something that the government could do, or I'm guessing they're all in there for a set amount of time?
To the best of my knowledge, when they're appointed, it's a 5-year term, so they are going to be there for 5 years. And I mean, I guess unless you found that they were in some way inappropriately operating or illegally operating, I don't think the view would be to remove them. We expect when we appoint them that they're going to act in the best interests of the CBC and govern themselves properly. Whether or not the board themselves have been directly involved in the decision to fight the Information Commissioner or not, I'm not sure, but that will be something I'll be asking Mr. Lacroix when he comes to the committee.
So it's a bit of a red herring then for supporters of the CBC, and by supporters I mean those that want them to be able to keep their secrets, to say, if the government doesn't like this, you can just reappoint the board. That would be a very dramatic step to go in and say, we're going to replace all of these people so we can get the information out.
Yeah, I think that would be very unprecedented, and I'm not quite sure that. I mean, that would be a decision that the Minister of Canadian Heritage obviously would make in consultation with the Prime Minister, because that's through that ministry. As the oversight for CBC would be through the Canadian Heritage Ministry. So yeah, I think that probably would be considered to be draconian. I don't think that's our intention at all. What we're trying to do is get to the bottom of what is the rationale for the CBC invoking Section 68(1) of the Act to not provide information out upon request. That's what we're trying to get to the bottom of here.
And I want to ask you about one of the infamous ones that was raised at committee when our boss, Mr. Pellado, appeared, but also was raised today. I'll ask you about that in a moment. But first, you're a new MP, elected back in May. Are you surprised at how quickly this committee has turned partisan. You would normally think it'd be a non-partisan type committee. You're dealing with ethics, you're dealing with access to information, but it's definitely come down to partisan lines. I think that the Conservatives on the committee are, when Mr. Pellado showed up, you asked tough questions at Quebecor, but you're also asking tough questions at CBC. The Liberals and the New Democrats appear to be playing defense for the state broadcaster.
Well, yeah, I mean, I can't to defend their tactics, what they're doing. I can tell you what I'm looking for as a member of the committee is I'm looking for interpretation of 68.1, and I'm looking to ensure that the integrity of the information commissioner is respected. Because quite frankly, when CBC is suing our information commissioner, essentially, in court, I don't think that's a very good sign. And as a parliamentarian, I want to know why tax dollars are being used by two different parties, both funded by the federal government, in a court that's funded by the federal government. I mean, that's just a colossal waste of taxpayers' money, in my opinion. And so, as a member of the committee, I'm trying to get to the bottom of this to make sure it doesn't happen again.
One of the documents that was raised by Mr. Pellado when he showed up and came up at committee today was a request to find out how many vehicles CBC had, and all they would release publicly was that they had one Ford 500. Now, we all know that they don't run an entire network in English and French across the country on a single Ford sedan. But they claimed that they wouldn't release anything else because releasing that would infringe on its creative, journalistic, and programming activities. The committee started to debate whether they should be allowed to see that document today. And all of a sudden, the New Democrats and the Liberals, people who had voted to release the Taliban prisoner documents, were saying, no, the committee can't see documents. We can't vote for this. What were your thoughts then? Because my immediate thought was, this is hypocrisy.
Well, absolutely, and ridiculous. I mean, we've asked for them confidential. I'm a new member of this committee. I'm learning as the process goes forward. I've never filed an access to information request in my life, ever before. I'd like to see what a request looks like and what a response looks like to a request that's being made. I think as a member of the committee, that's important information for me to have. Mr. Del Mastro's motion was that we get that in confidence. We're not releasing these documents publicly. The 10 of us or 12 of us, I guess, that are on the committee would all get to see it, along with, I guess, the clerk of our committee, and that would be it. And I don't think that's an unreasonable request for us to be making, and I think members of the committee should see what we're talking about here and the types of requests and the responses that the CBC's been providing.
Now, you're not asking them to bust open the dam and release everything. No. You want to be able to see what was asked for, what was released, and what was not released, so that you can have a better understanding of how to do your job.
Yeah, and I want to see what was redacted and what wasn't, what was blacked out, what wasn't, why were certain things blacked out. Because the Information Commissioner, when she came to committee, she basically said other Crown corporations give her everything that she asks for, and then she makes a determination as to what is appropriate to be released publicly or released back to the requester, and what isn't. And I respect her judgment, her and her office, to determine whether 68.1 of the Act, which is journalism, creativity, and programming interests of the CBC, need to be protected or not. I trust her as an independent officer of Parliament to make that determination. So I need to see the documents because I still don't know what the definition of journalistic, creative, or programming as far as the CBC is concerned. I don't know what that definition is right now. And as a parliamentarian, I think I should know.
I don't think any of us know quite yet, Brett, but thank you very much.
My pleasure.